What's up, people, and welcome back to the channel. One more time from the beautiful city of Vienna, capital of Austria, Central Europe. Spring, the sun is here. Oh my God. So, do you speak English? ¿Hablas español? Parlez-vous français? Sprechen Sie Deutsch? Can I live in Central Europe without German? Can I just survive with English, with Spanish, with Italian? Can I do it? Central Europe, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, a place where over 100 million people live, where 88% of people speak German as their native language. The question is, can you survive here only speaking English or Spanish or French? That's the question. And today we're gonna bring some answers. Yeah, but before we start giving some answers, we have to split into three different categories. A, surviving as a tourist. B, functioning as a local resident. And category number 3 is long-term integration. So let's start with the easiest one, which is surviving as a tourist. Can you come with just a little bit of English or a little bit of Spanish or a little bit of French or Italian? So my dears, as a tourist, in principle, yes, it is okay if you come with a foreign language, but please consider that English is one of the most spoken languages, so probably there is a high chance that they speak English rather than French or Italian or Portuguese or any other language. So yes, technically you can come speaking Chinese if you want, but if you're talking about foreign languages, if you speak at least English, things are going to be a little bit easier for you as a tourist. Well, as a tourist, probably the conversations you're going to have are, can I have a coffee? I don't know, what is the metro station? Yeah, if you know how to say a couple of drinks in English, that's going to be helpful. If you know how to say the numbers in English, that's going to be helpful, but that's as far as it goes. Probably the chances as a tourist that you have to go into a conversation where it involves any type of bureaucracy, paperwork in full German are very low. So without going into any specific cases, yes, you can come to Central Europe not speaking German, but I would always encourage you to learn a couple of words in English. That's the most spoken language everywhere. So that's gonna make your life just easier. Now, level number 2. Things might change when you want to become a local. Let's say you come for work, 1-2 years. Well, now the panorama, the view kind of changes a little bit. The first thing is that it depends on your job. There are some jobs that are kind of language friendly. So the language barrier is a little bit less, it's more flexible. Let's say tech, IT, somehow education. I mean education in the sense that you come, for example, to Germany to teach Spanish or to teach English. Yeah, in that case, your language might become somehow not a priority, but it balances out. Same thing might happen with IT or technology. I think those jobs are way more flexible in terms of language. And for sure, because of the nature of those jobs, probably people in IT, technology, computer programming, they might have access to resources that are going to help them out with language. So yeah, in those cases, you are kind of safe. On the other hand, if you work in fields like tourism, probably knowing more than one language is a plus rather than a limitation. Another case would be working in a multinational company or an international company. Yeah, probably language-wise is more flexible. In this same level, we have to make a distinction. There is a huge difference between living in a multicultural capital, big city, rather than a small town. That's a game changer. Living in cities like Vienna or Zurich or Munich or Berlin, well, the chances that most of the population is kind of well educated and know more than German, meaning they know English. Obviously, Switzerland, they have access to French as well, or Italian. So, the rules kind of change. But if you're living in a small town, the chances that they speak not just German, but dialect German that is even harder, are way higher. And let me tell you, even locals say, like people from Vienna, for example, they say that when they go to small villages, they do not understand all people talking. They speak just a different language. It's not German at all. Now, when we talk about Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, I would say that the English language impacts these countries differently. In the case of Switzerland, English is mostly present in international workplaces. In the case of Germany, English works better in big cities: Frankfurt, Munich, Berlin. And in the case of Austria, English doesn't work. I'm joking. In the case of Austria, English is very cool and it works perfectly fine short term. But when you start your process of integration, then bureaucracy, paperwork, then German becomes very necessary. And as I said before, depending on your job, English might be more flexible or even a plus. For example, tech, startups, multinational, tourism, and to a certain extent, education. However, when you plan long-term or even integration, there are certain fields that you might need German. Fields like healthcare and public administration, other sides of education, customer service or face-to-face jobs. Unfortunately, in these ones, you cannot escape the German language. Now, things might be a little bit more complex, let's say language-wise, when you want to start your process of integration. And in case you don't know, when we talk about process of integration, that means your longer-term plan, because maybe you plan to stay like permanently, you plan to obtain a permanent residence or a citizenship. So in this case, we're not talking about that you came for a year and you want to leave. No, in that case, we mean like people like me that we plan to settle down in a specific country, in my case, in Austria. So I have already started my process of integration, which include, among other things, start collecting time. For example, in my case, that I want to settle down here, I need to collect 5 years working and living in Austria, as well as a language requirement. Which means that if I want to obtain my permanent residence or citizenship, I need to prove my language skills in German. And as I said, these are just two things among other ones that are not that flexible with language. When it comes to the time that you want to settle down long-term in a place, then, along the way you have to deal with bureaucracy, paperwork. So in this case of the Germanic-speaking countries, you might need German for resident paperwork, contracts, insurance, healthcare, letters from the authorities. In many cases, those letters you can only reply in German. In many cases, apartment applications. And in the very specific case of Austria, 81% of people age 24 to 64 years old speak native German. That's their mother tongue. So you might need to learn a couple of words. However, there is a last point that I want to touch on that I think is the conclusion of why you might need the local language, and I think it's one of the most important and relevant points to talk about. And this point is called belonging. Belonging, like when you become part of something, when you start creating community, when you start creating connections with people. Unfortunately, there is something that only foreigners we might understand. If you have never left your country, maybe you don't understand this. This is the thing. Even if you have spent in a place many years, you have worked in the place, you already have friends, probably you have a partner, a wife, a husband. If you don't speak the language, in a social context, you are always going to be out. In a social context, you are always going to be the foreigner, the outsider. Yeah, because if you think about it, when people interact with you, they have to change their mother tongue to accommodate to you. And in that translation, so here we can quote lost in translation. There are many things that get lost in translation. And many people say something that is completely true. When you do not speak the local language, there are things and parts of the culture that you would never understand. So therefore, you won't completely and fully belong. You won't belong until you learn the language. There are aspects of history, traditions, values that you would understand fully when you speak the language. When creating community and creating connections, people who can communicate with you in their local language are going to create stronger connections with you. And other things that might seem silly and not important that actually are absolutely important. For example, humor. You want to understand humor. You want to understand jokes. You want to understand expressions. Even right now, for example, I speak a little bit of Deutsch. I already started my German lessons, and I'm learning step by step. Even though I can follow a conversation, even though I can answer basic questions, I'm still far away from understanding humor. And the last question that maybe you could ask me is, hey, is it worth it? Is it worth it to learn German? Well, my answer is yes. And my answer is based on the usage. And my answer is based on the usage or the practicity of learning a language. For example, as many of you know, in previous years, I lived 4 years in Poland, in the beautiful city of Krakow, the south of Poland. Even though I lived there for 4 years, I learned some Polish. I never studied Polish. I never properly learned Polish. I just learned things from, people talking. And yeah, I obtained certain level of spoken Polish. That, by the way, Polish is one of the hardest languages, not just in Europe, but in the world. One of my biggest demotivations to learn Polish is that, first of all, I had to spend many years learning Polish to properly learn it and speak it properly. But then I cannot use Polish out of Poland. So the usage is very limited. That's why, in my case, if I can tell you, for example, I want to learn Polish, I will be like, if your plan is not to live in Poland forever, there is no reason to spend years and years trying to learn this difficult Slavic language. Different case is German. German, you might use it mainly in 3 big countries. Germany being the biggest ones, Switzerland for many things, maybe you have interest, and Austria. Secondly, believe it or not, it's not that difficult. Yeah, it might take time. You might need to learn grammar, new pronunciation. You need to accommodate your tongue in different ways to produce a couple of different sounds that, for example, in my case, I'm a person who speaks Spanish, there are some sounds that I'm still not used to, but I'm still practicing. However, it's not that different from, from English in the sense of some grammar. So you might kind of help each other with some English, you might understand German. I mean, some things might make sense. And in general, I think it's a language that it might take some time, but it's not too hard to learn. And knowing German is going to open a door of new possibilities, mainly in Germany. Germany is a huge country, Central Europe, a lot of opportunities for work, for study, for businesses, for many things. Same as Switzerland and Austria, but Switzerland and Austria are very small in comparison to Germany. So it's like unlocking a new wave and world of possibilities. Why not? So my dears, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that in this video you learned 1 or 2 things. Maybe it's interesting. Please do not forget to subscribe, to like, to share. That's gonna help me a lot. And probably we're gonna see each other very soon with a new video. Thank you so much and have a good one. See you.